Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP, joined now by Richard Porter. He is a former committeeman from the state of Illinois, Republican committeeman, and a lawyer and a contributor to Real Clear Politics. Richard, great to have you back.
It's good to be here, Tom.
Okay, so one of the reasons I want to talk to you had a piece that we ran on the site this morning talking about DOGE, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that's going to be headed by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They were on Capitol Hill yesterday, sort of making the pitch to folks there. Give our listeners a sense of your argument. It's a legal argument. It's a specific argument about how they should attack this. Set this up for our listeners.
Sure. The thing to recognize is that the legal structure of how the executive branch operates is designed to be deliberative. It takes time. Actions the executive takes cannot be arbitrary and capricious. They have to be reasoned. And their actions, their regulatory actions, whether it's writing a regulation or deleting a regulation, has to be explained, and the courts will review the explanation to make sure that it's reasoned as opposed to arbitrary and capricious. This is the structure by which the executive branch has been constrained to make sure that it operates in a way that is, it can be anticipated by the people, and people have a role with the notice and comment procedure and the timing and so forth. So it's designed to go slowly and deliberatively. Unfortunately, that's not really conducive to a restructuring. Restructurings that take a long time never happen. And right now we have a political moment where there's a lot of eagerness around the restructuring of the government, a lot of passion, the belief the government is just way too big, and I think that's part of what captured the public's imagination with the election of Donald Trump. And so what we need to do is, in order to enable that to occur, in order to empower the president to take the actions necessary to restructure how the government works, we need to cut some of those strings, those legal strings that are designed to constrain the executive's actions, and empower him instead to take some of these actions in a more swift and efficient manner.
And what is that going to look like? How would that? Is this needs to be done through Congress? Is that the argument that uh,
Yeah.
any executive order that Trump issues, it'll be challenged in the courts, which, as you mentioned, half the federal judiciary is appointed by Democrats and probably wouldn't look favorably upon some of those actions. And B, couldn't those also be undone by the next president if a Democrat wins 4 years from now or 8 years from now?
Right. Look, there's actually only a limited scope of action the president can take without changing the law. And the law, you could actually design a whole proposal of what you want to do, and you could take it back to Congress, and you could debate every detail of what that proposal would look like, and then Congress could vote for it. You'd need to get up to 60 votes in the Senate to get something like that through. It's just very unlikely that any kind of major change in the government is going to work its way through Congress in the usual way. And so what I'm proposing is instead empowering the president with essentially a blank check, and say to the president he has a time-limited power to reorganize the government without complying with, basically suspending the rules that limit the president's power to act with impunity, just to get things done, right? As opposed to issuing regulations and then waiting 90 days for comments and responding to the comments and then going to the courts and all that sort of thing. To wipe that slate clean, give the president the power to act. And I think one of the protections here would be to do it only for a limited period of time. The president has said he wants to see the DOGE work done by the 250th anniversary of the birth of the nation, by July 4th of 2026. So why not give the president the power to make some sweeping changes between now and that sesquicentennial? That's not easy for you to say, right? And so that we can actually get some of these things done. Otherwise, it won't be quite the impact. It won't have the impact that I think that Elon Musk and other people have been promising.
We're speaking with Richard Porter. He's a former lawyer from Chicago, former GOP committeeman from the state of Illinois, contributor to Real Clear Politics, has a piece on our site this morning called Cut the Strings, excuse me, and talking about this DOGE effort that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. One of the things they said, Richard, is that the DOGE itself would expire. They put a time limit on it. This is very much seen as an in the moment type of thing, a once in a generation or more
Yeah.
um, effort that if it doesn't happen in the next year or two, it's probably never going to happen. And look, you've been in Washington, you've been part of administrations, you've watched this for a long time, as I have. The cynic in me is looking at this and thinking it sounds good, and you're right. There is a lot of energy and enthusiasm and support, quite frankly, across the political spectrum for this kind of stuff. At the same time, how realistic is it? I mean, the bureaucracy is so bloated, so entrenched, and manages to, go into circle the wagons to protection mode that it's going to be really, really difficult. It seems like for anything substantial and lasting to get done here. That's just my impression. I don't know. Do you feel the same way, or do you have
Well,
optimism that this might
I
actually
mean,
succeed?
well, I think it could succeed, but I think, that instinct of the bureaucrats to protect themselves is one of the protective devices that Congress can rely upon in giving the president a blank check. I mean, so one of the concerns they say, well, gee whiz, I mean, giving the president that much power, what if he goes crazy with it? Well, the reality is there's so many constraints. It's not like there's a risk of the president doing too much. The much more likely result, as you've said, is he won't do enough, right? And so going that extra mile to give him the power, recognizing that there are all sorts of institutional and informal constraints on the ability to make changes, that will still slow things down. But, so empowering the president legally doesn't mean that those constraints won't go away. It does mean you won't be in court. Maybe you won't get bogged down as much with lawsuits and slowed down that way. So, I think it's the only way we're actually make a real impact is giving more latitude, more freedom of action to the president, and recognizing that in a short period of time, with the expertise of Vivek and Ilan, it's really unlikely that anything terrible is going to happen. To the contrary, this is the only way anything good might happen is by giving them that kind of power.
On the other hand, Richard, the previous administration has set a precedent, and I'm thinking specifically about the student loan forgiveness program, which was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, and yet didn't stop them from continuing to pursue that. I mean, yes, if they go at it through executive action, I'm sure it would end up in the courts, but there is precedent for Trump to just say, you know what, we're going to keep doing it anyway, which, I mean, I'm not sure that's great for the country. Could cause a constitutional crisis of some sort, but Biden didn't seem to, and the Democrats did not seem to care at all about that when they were in power.
Well, and it takes a long time to work its way through the courts. And, part of what happens is that starts changing the dynamic. If the court comes out with a strong opinion against some of these actions, that they're illegal actions, to press ahead in the face of that becomes, part of the story of what you're doing. You're acting in a manner that's illegal. I think that was one of the things that brought Joe Biden down was the fact that he refused to recognize that his actions were beyond the scope of what the president could do. So, I mean, there's risk with following that path, and it just takes so much time. And I just feel like this is such a wonderful moment where the stars are aligned and the party is unified behind doing this. We're divided on so many other things. There's so much support for President Trump, and this is part of the magic that got him elected. Why not seize that and give him as much power as we can get through Congress? And there might be some limits on what you can actually do. I suggested a very sweeping blank check. It may well be in order to get it through in the reconciliation process, which only requires 50 plus one votes in the Senate, you'd have to limit the scope of that blank check somewhat more than I've suggested. But that's the sort of thing you could work on with the parliamentarian to get to a point where you've given the president as much power as possible to get this done without getting bogged down in court.
All right. Well, we'll see how your suggestion fares in the court of public opinion, and we'll see how this whole thing plays out. Richard Porter, former lawyer, contributor to Real Clear Politics. I urge everybody to go to Real Clear Politics and read the piece for yourself. And we appreciate you coming on, Richard.
Thanks, Tom. Have a great day.
All right. Going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM after this.